Chapter 2061. Magnificent Counterattack 9. Why are you laughing? Big Sister Wei innocently looked at Su Luo. You're so smart. Huh? Su Luo pointed at the chicken wing bones that had been thrown far away and raised an eyebrow at Big Sister Wei. Isn't this the best inspiration? Big Sister Wei continued gnawing her chicken leg bones and blankly looked at Su Luo at the same time. She didn't understand. Su Luo smiled and began to think about the plan. There were flying magical beasts in the outer magical beast zone, so it was impossible to rush back in one day. The outer magical beast zone map was deeply engraved in Su Luo's mind, so she knew exactly how far it was from the downstream mountain. Even if she had wings that could fly, it was still absolutely impossible to rush back right away. Therefore, what did the joy in Su Luo's eyes mean? Su Luo stretched out her right palm, and a small golden ship appeared in her white, smooth palm. Big Sister Wei slightly glanced at the delicate small golden ship in Su Luo's palm, then continued gnawing at her chicken wing bones. Nothing could compare to the fragrance of her grilled meat. Su Luo smiled and proceeded to insert her spiritual power into the ship. One could see the little golden ship slowly fly in midair and started getting bigger and bigger with the support of the spiritual power. A few seconds passed. The ship could now accommodate 2 people. The ship was still in golden color, but had an oval shape. What is this? This strange ship instantly caught Big Sister Wei's attention. She even had forgotten to eat her chicken legs and stared amazingly at the ship. Su Luo looked at the golden ship parked in front of her and nodded with a smile. When she came to Purgatory City before, the master of the city gave her this treasure. However, she was always in the city, and she almost forgot about this ship. Just earlier, Su Luo was worried about how to get back quickly when she saw Big Sister Wei gnawing on her chicken wings, and she finally remembered this treasure, which had accumulated dust in her space bag. With this golden ship, it was very easy to rush back quickly. Su Luo pulled Big Sister Wei to the golden ship. Wow, this is a ship. Big Sister Wei's eyes were as round as eggs and looked around the ship with admiration. Yeah, going quickly. I believe we could rush back in one day. Su Luo said with a smile. This golden ship was really a necessary transportation, and it could even be kept in the space bag. However, after Su Luo got on the golden ship and flew it, she discovered another problem. It needs spiritual power to drive this golden ship. However, her soul is currently injured, so she couldn't excessively use spiritual power. How could she find extra spiritual power now? Su Luo thought for a while, and then threw this problem to Big Sister Wei. Big Sister Wei was physically strong and full of spiritual power as she ate most of the food. So, let her spend some of it. After explaining some precautions to Big Sister Wei, Su Luo sat on the bed with her legs crossed and quickly entered the meditative state. Her soul was wounded and needed a lot of spiritual power to heal. After all, it was too rushed. She might not be able to heal much within one day. Su Luo threw an Emperor-grade spirit restoration pill in her mouth and returned to a meditative state. Although Big Sister Wei was stupid, a fool still had an advantage that ordinary people didn't have. After Su Luo explained the matter to Big Sister Wei slapped her chest and agreed on the spot. Then, day and night, she kept inserting her spiritual energy to the ship. Her posture hadn't moved at all. When Su Luo woke up, it was almost 8 o'clock in the morning. Chapter 2062. Magnificent Counterattack 10. Suddenly, waves of shaking ran throughout the golden ship. Su Luo slowly opened her eyes and turned to ask Big Sister Wei. What happened? Big Sister Wei had a blank expression. I don't know, but it's suddenly consuming a lot of my spiritual energy. It's almost consumed all of it. Su Luo looked out the window towards the outside and spent some time analyzing the situation. She then told Big Sister Wei, we're about to reach Distal End Mountain. Let's go down. Due to the array set up for Distal End Mountain, if someone wanted to fly overhead, they would waste a lot of spiritual energy. The gains would not make up for the losses. In any case, they still had a little bit of time. Why not go on foot to participate in the exam? This was also doable. As such, Su Luo and Big Sister Wei alighted from the golden ship towards a hidden location. Under the control of Su Luo's spiritual power, the golden ship slowly shrunk, shrinking until it became a really small thing. Then Su Luo kept it in her space. Big Sister Wei opened her eyes wide, staring dazedly. "Let's go." Su Luo patted Big Sister Wei's shoulder, snapping her out of her trance. After recuperating for an entire day, Su Luo's complexion was much healthier. Her spiritual energy had also been replenished. Unless they were an extremely powerful expert, no one should be able to tell that Su Luo's soul was injured. The two people quickly stepped towards Distal End Mountain's Tower of Trials exam. Every mountain had its own Tower of Trials, and this Tower of Trials was special as its exam ran only once a month. In the Genius Training Camp, those ranked below 300 were all squeezed together on Distal End Mountain. If they wished to move to the downstream mountain residence at the front, there was only one way to do it. You had to score among the top 3 in the Distal End Mountain's Tower of Trials exam. Of course, achieving this did not necessarily mean they would be able to enter the downstream mountain. This was just a downstream mountain examination certificate. It was only by scoring among the top 3 that they would then have a chance to take the exam alongside those from downstream mountain. As long as they scored better than the person with the lowest score from downstream mountain, they would be able to enter downstream mountain. Meanwhile, the person from downstream mountain who scored the worst would be kicked out to Distal End Mountain. The competition was cruel and desperate. Throughout the long years, there was an unending stream of candidates getting promoted. Of course, there was also an unceasing stream of candidates getting demoted from the mountains at the upper layer. Now, what Su Luo wanted to do was precisely to score among the top 3. She wanted to quickly enter the Genius Training Camp's core, and this core was the legendary Top 100. Only by entering the Top 100 would one be considered a true disciple and be able to access better resources to grow faster. She did not want to still be hanging about outside by the time Nangong Luyun came to get her. She could not embarrass such a person. Suddenly, Su Luo sensed a dangerous attack approach. Following that, an arrow carrying with it a power so mighty it could soar into the heavens jet ruthlessly towards Su Luo's back. The speed of the arrow was extremely fast. It was as fast as a wishing star shooting across the sky. Su Luo suddenly felt a kind of powerlessness, as though she had been locked in place. However, she had a quick reaction speed after all, so she subconsciously rolled downwards onto the ground. Simultaneously, Big Sister Wei subconsciously smashed her halberd down towards the arrow. The arrow was ruthlessly split into 2 before falling onto the dusty earth. However, the crisis was not averted with just that. 7 stars pearl string arrows. 7 successive arrows linking together in the form of a wishing star, with each one being more ruthless than the last, all shot towards Su Luo. This person's skills were definitely not those of an expert of the commander rank. Those of the commander rank would not have such a formidable might and terrifying killing intent. Su Luo surmised that this person's skills were definitely of the saint rank. Who was this person who had such a great desire to murder her? Who was this person that they knew she would certainly pass through here? These thoughts flashed through her mind, but they very quickly disappeared without a trace. She could think about the assassin again later, but she only had one life. Chapter 2063, Magnificent Counterattack, 11. The might of the 7 stars pearl string arrow was immensely powerful. Even Big Sister Wei's large halberd couldn't completely get rid of it. Instead, the arrow even drew a huge mark on the stick. Surrounded by the first 6 arrows, Big Sister Wei was confused. The last arrow seemed to have a mind of itself, as it shot ruthlessly toward the space in between Su Luo's eyebrows. With that kind of speed and might, it was simply pronouncing the target's death. However, Su Luo's mouth slowly hooked into a sneer. They wanted to use arrows to kill her? Perhaps that might have been possible 5 days ago, but that wasn't possible now. Su Luo, however, didn't want to reveal her strength so quickly. Right when the arrow was 1 meter away from Hera. Pung! Su Luo quickly evaded it. as the Cheng-Ying sword in her hand sliced down from above. It was a sharp and clear striking sound. Simultaneously, flames radiated all around. Below the Cheng-Ying sword, the arrow had been sliced in half. At this moment, there was actually some sweat on Su Luo's forehead as her figure swayed. The might of this arrow was too terrifying. It shook her so hard that her thumb to her forefinger went numb. Even now, her hand that held the Cheng-Ying sword was still shaking slightly, unable to suppress it. Who exactly was the archer? Su Luo suddenly looked in the direction the arrow came from. Over there was a watchtower. Currently, the tower was totally empty, without even the shadow of a ghost. The corners of Su Luo's lips raised up into a mocking sneer. The moment they saw that they could not kill her, they sure went into hiding quickly. However, what did it matter if they were fast? Su Luo let Little Sable go over there. Little Sable's nose was especially sensitive. Apart from having the ability to recognize the way, its nose could remember all sorts of scents, including everyone's unique origin odor. Once Little Sable picked up the scent, they would know who the archer was the next time they encountered him. Little Sable went over there like a streak of lightning and then quickly returned. Its little face was tense with a cold and focused expression. It nodded to Su Luo solemnly, indicating that it had already committed the scent to memory. As Su Luo had almost been shot dead earlier, Little Sable still had a lingering fear in its heart even now. It understood very clearly the importance of this task, and that this definitely wasn't just for fun. Su Luo rubbed its little head to tell it not to be so tense. To her, this was just an ordinary and small matter. Indeed, the whole time during this journey, had there ever been a single time when she had not been surrounded by peril and had to flee from mortal danger? Su Luo thought she was used to it, but wasn't she really numb to it by now? Su Luo's line of sight dropped down to the Cheng-Ying sword. If the Cheng-Ying sword were a bit sharper, then she would not have had to hit so hard in that final blow to the extent that it caused her hand to go numb. It seemed that she had to find a strengthening gem to temper the Cheng-Ying sword even more. At this moment, Big Sister Wei was already done dealing with the 6 arrows. While carrying the broken arrows, she cheerfully and lightheartedly rushed over to Su Luo, seeking praise. Su Luo smiled and gave Big Sister Wei a few lines of praise, making her extremely happy. When Su Luo's line of sight shifted down to the arrows, she pursed her lips slightly. They could not waste these arrows. She would take the resources and use them again. It was an old habit of hers. Su Luo thought about the war god puppet inside her space and smiled slightly. The war god puppet would have something good to eat again. After placing the whole lot of arrows into her space, Su Luo and Big Sister Wei hurriedly left for the Tower of Trials. Due to the delay they encountered on their way there, they were definitely going to be somewhat late, but hoped they would still be able to make it. They reached the Purgatory Tower very quickly. However, at the entrance of the Tower of Trials, Su Luo and Big Sister Wei were unexpectedly held back by someone. The chief was a woman, a very fierce and tough-looking woman. The woman is 30 years old in the coming year. Her facial features were cold and hard while her expression was stiff and solemn. Her whole body emitted an unapproachable aura. Chapter 2064, Magnificent Counterattack, 12. As Su Luo looked at the doors that were about to close, she gave a displeased glance at the woman. Apologies. Then she pulled Big Sister Wei, wanting to rush inside. However, the woman actually took action directly. Her pair of hands, which seemed to possess an incomparably formidable strength, were like an eagle's claws as they reached out to grab Su Luo's neck. If Su Luo were to be caught by those claws, her neck would probably snap. Right at this critical moment, Su Luo's figure ducked down and avoided the woman's hands. Simultaneously, Big Sister Wei swung down ferociously at the middle-aged woman. As the chief guardian of the Tower of Trials, the middle-aged woman was normally flattered and fawned upon by others. Had she ever been hit in the face like she was today? Immediately, her face went ashen with fury. Stop! Right at this moment, a quiet and cold white figure descended slowly. Just the sight of him dressed in soft white robes seemingly extraordinarily eminent, noble, and distinctly splendid, which gave others an intense feeling of being oppressed. The man nodded towards the middle-aged woman, who unexpectedly lowered her gaze quickly and took a step back. Su Luo looked at Luo Yichen curiously, with feelings of doubt. To think that he was this powerful? That he could make the woman who was like Abbess Miju immediately change her attitude so dramatically and take the initiative to withdraw, even adopting a deferential and humble appearance? Right when Su Luo was curiously sizing up Luo Yichen tilted his head and swept a glance over Su Luo. With this glance, a pure and cold expression flashed across the depths of his eyes. His dark eyes were like smudges of ink enveloped in a faint halo, so deep and bottomless, and yet able to arouse a rush of excitement in others. Su Luo coughed quietly and gave a small smile as she greeted, "Senior Brother Luo." Luo Yichen watched Su Luo intently. An intense bright light appeared in his eyes as he seriously and solemnly stiffened his expression. Still not hurrying inside. Oh, he's actually behaving rather like a senior brother. Su Luo criticized him silently in her heart. She rubbed her nose embarrassingly and turned around, wanting to go inside obediently. However, before she even took a step forward, she was stopped by Abbess Miju. Wait a moment. Although Abbess Miju's attitude was now gentle, she was still not letting them through. Su Luo grinned as she looked at Abbess Miju. What is it? Still not letting us through? Now that Su Luo had her senior brother Luo to depend on for protection, she naturally began to act more boldly. She wasn't even a little bit afraid that Abbess Miju would deliberately make things difficult for her. "This young lady, you want to enter the exam? But have you registered yet?" Abbess Miju smiled neither unhappily nor happily. She gazed at Su Luo with a cold light flashing past her eyes. Registered? A huge question mark seemed to appear on her forehead as her mind immediately stopped running. Could it be that it wasn't enough simply to come over and participate? She still had to register her name? Seeing Su Luo's vacant expression, Abbess Miju smiled insincerely and let out a cold laugh. She raised her chin arrogantly, the corners of her mouth hooked up into a taunting and mocking sneer. Luo Yichen's brilliant eyes gazed at Su Luo deeply, and then seemed to breathe in just as deeply. It was only after doing so that the dark depths of his eyes seemed to fade away, replaced with a helpless expression. He asked Su Luo, "You really didn't register?" Su Luo's expression showed that she had been unprepared. Register? No one had told her she had to register. Luo Yichen looked at the elegant and incomparably gorgeous woman before him and shook his head, seemingly with no other choice but to sigh. "If you haven't registered, you cannot enter." Abbess Miju sneered mockingly. Then she immediately glanced at Luo Yichen and changed to a respectful and humble tone as she said, "Master Luo, you're the most familiar with the rules. You won't make things difficult for your juniors, right?" Seeing Abbess Miju stick her nose up toward the sky, Su Luo became angry. However, she truly did not have a registration form. Looking at the Tower of Trials doors that were about to close, the expression in her eyes deepened. Chapter 2065, Magnificent Counterattack. 13. Su Luo's eyebrows furrowed deeply. Naturally, it was fine if she took the exam next month, but her communication amulet will be gone by then. Right when Su Luo was feeling helpless, 2 pieces of white jade were brought before her. The pair of hands that held them was so spotlessly white like jade. Each had 5 slender and fair fingers, with such distinct joints that it seemed as if they had been delicately carved out of the quintessence of white jade. They were even suffused with a lustrous white glow. "Brother Luo?" Su Luo took in a deep breath as her clear eyes slowly turned to meet Luo Yichen's deep eyes. Luo Yichen's pair of deep eyes was clear, yet bottomless. They were as dark and deep as the sea, profoundly mysterious. "The doors are going to close soon." A smile suddenly spread across Luo Yichen's face. His eyes were so clear that they seemed to shine like mirrors, as well as the sun and moon illuminating the sky with their splendor. Oh! Su Luo grabbed the 2 pieces of jade with one hand, while Big Sister Wei also used one hand to heavily push Abbess Miju away, to the extent of causing her to fall onto the ground. Then, the two people rushed as they were flying, towards the interior of the Tower of Trials, which was about to close. The Tower of Trials' red entrance doors barely still had an opening wide enough for a single person to fit through. Whoosha? Hey! Just as the two figures rushed through to the interior in a flash, the red entrance doors gradually closed. All of this happened way too fast, like the time it takes for lightning to ignite a flint. It was at this time that Abbess Miju, who had been heavily pushed to the ground, finally came back to her senses. Seeing the two figures enter through the doors in a flash, Abbess Miju got so angry that she slammed her fist heavily onto the ground. She failed to do what that person had requested of her. How hateful! As she got up, she stared coldly at Luo Yichen, who stood with his hands behind his back. Master Luo, with his fine black hair and jade belt, was elegant and eminent, distinctly splendid and noble, yet he could also pressure others with an imposing manner that was matchless in this world. This was not someone she could afford to offend, but she still could not restrain herself from grumbling. Master Luo deliberately used your spiritual power to stop the entrance doors from closing. Although this is Distal End Mountain, it is not a place where you can do as you wish. I will certainly report this matter to the Elders Association. The Genius Training Camp also had an Elders Association. As Luo Yichen watched Su Luo's disappearing back view, his long eyelashes drooped down. No one could see the mood in his eyes clearly. He flung out his wide sleeves and tilted his head as he swept a glance towards Abbess Miju, with eyes completely bereft of the gentleness he had shown Su Luo. At this time, his eyes flashed with light, a light so cold and ruthless that it could burn straight through the skies. There's no benefit in opposing her. Luo Yichen's eyes were serene and dark as ink as he looked at Abbess Miju deeply with an expression like he was looking at an insect. His pale, thin lips lifted slightly. If you don't want to die, then just be good and stay here. Soon after, his slender and distinctly cold figure gradually faded under the sun, disappearing without a trace. Luo Yichen's glance filled Abbess Miju's heart with fear and made her body seem like it was in an ice house. It was only after Luo Yichen had left for a quarter of an hour that she then felt her frozen blood slowly begin to flow again, and her practically frozen soul to recover. It was an awfully terrifying glance. With fear still lingering in her heart, Abbess Miju looked at the direction in which Luo Yichen had disappeared earlier. Who could have imagined that Master Luo, who was always gentle, pure like jade, and extraordinary, would unexpectedly have times when he was this terrifying? With such an irreplaceable, powerful expert like Master Luo protecting her, could that person really kill Su Luo? Even if they managed to kill her, would they ultimately be able to escape Master Luo's pursuit to kill them? Thinking until here, Abbess Miju sank in a deep thought about the difficult situation. Su Luo and Big Sister Wei had moved quickly, almost flying inside through the red entrance doors. After going inside, their surroundings were pitch black. Su Luo was puzzled. Due to being in too much of a hurry, she did not take proper note of what the exam was testing this time. Have you taken this exam before? Su Luo asked Big Sister Wei. Chapter 2066. Magnificent Counterattack 14. Unexpectedly, Big Sister Wei appeared to be at a loss as she shook her head. I've never taken it before. Su Luo scratched her head. Fortunately, she hadn't placed much hope on her silly big sister in the first place. There were a total of 7 floors in the Tower of Trials. They would have to go up one floor at a time anyway, so they would just have to figure it out when the time came. As Su Luo and Big Sister Wei had arrived last, they didn't meet anyone else in the dark first floor. Come on, let's go up to take a look. The rather bewildered Su Luo pulled along the completely clueless Big Sister Wei. Once the two people found the stone steps, they climbed up step by step. They would reach the second floor very quickly. Yet Su Luo's footsteps came to a stop. She tilted her head and asked Big Sister Wei, "Do you sense anything?" Big Sister Wei had a blank look on her face and an innocent expression in her eyes. She shook her head and then shook it again. Su Luo spent a moment organizing her words, trying to describe the sensation she felt. For example, spiritual fluctuations? Don't tell me you didn't feel a wave of weak spiritual fluctuations rush towards your body? It was so weak that it practically couldn't be felt, but Su Luo still just barely managed to sense it. Quietly, Big Sister Wei focused her senses for a moment. Then, as her big eyes looked innocently at Su Luo, Big Sister Wei shook her head seriously. Could it be that the suppression force is too weak, so you can't sense it? Su Luo pondered, touching her chin out of habit. Right at this moment, a clear burst of coughs suddenly came from a dark corner. Cough cougha? Eh? Cough cougha? Eh? Su Luo and Big Sister Wei exchanged a glance, and the two of them quick-stepped over to the corner in a rush. Their figures moved, and in the blink of an eye, they had already arrived there. At this moment, Su Luo could clearly see the person lying on the floor in the corner. She saw that he was covered in blood, and there was also blood spurting out continuously from his nose. This person, who was currently leaning against the walls of the corner while looking dispirited and listless, looked weakly at Su Luo and Big Sister Wei. When he saw Big Sister Wei, his eyes suddenly lit up. "Oh!" Su Luo exclaimed softly. She never imagined that they would encounter someone they knew in this Tower of Trials. Su Luo had seen this person before. Not only had they met before, but Big Sister Wei was even more familiar with him than she was. This was because he used to be Big Sister Wei's little follower. In the past, a group of them had followed Big Sister Wei and charged aggressively towards Su Luo's villa. Ultimately, Su Luo beat them up until they were in a sorry state. This person was one of the little followers who had no choice but to spend some points to redeem their follower. When Big Sister Wei saw him, her eyes didn't move at all. Her expression was very calm, like she was looking at a stone. The little follower looked at Big Sister Wei and became extremely excited. His figure trembled continuously as he became so happy that he was about to cry. He repeated incessantly, "Big Sister, Big Sister." Oh, Big Sister Wei looked at him confusedly. She tilted her head and thought about it for a moment, but she still couldn't figure it out. Consequently, she just pointed at the little follower. Unashamed to ask and learn from her juniors, she asked Su Luo, "What is he crying about? Was it really all right for a grown man to cry like this?" Buzzing away like a mosquito, he was so noisy. Big Sister Wei cursed at him silently, while waving her hand at him in annoyance like he was some smelly poop. "Pfta? Eh?" Su Luo couldn't stop herself from immediately bursting out in laughter. Big Sister Wei was too cute. Those people had betrayed her. She didn't bear any grudges or animosity towards them, nor did she ever think of retaliating. However, right now, she was actually getting her revenge. This was because forgetting and disregarding someone was one of the best ways to get revenge. "You don't recognize him anymore?" Su Luo asked Big Sister Wei with a smile. Big Sister Wei knitted her brows and thought about it for a moment. She nodded very sincerely and then shook her head. "He looks familiar." Chapter 2067. Surmounting All Difficulties 1. Stop crying. Big Sister Wei glared at him unhappily and yelled, "I don't remember means I don't remember. So what? You're just reminding me that I have a bad memory." Hearing Big Sister Wei's burst of explosive shouts, Xiao Wu was immediately frightened. He didn't dare to speak anymore and could only stare at Big Sister Wei blankly. In fact, he really wanted to tell her about his sufferings. Since Big Sister Wei left, their days had been difficult. Without Big Sister Wei's backing, the people who had been bullied by them began to unite to oppose them and made them run around like rats. If it wasn't for the fact that they couldn't take it anymore, they wouldn't take the risk and try the assessment to go down the mountain. Xiao Wu wrinkled his nose and looked weakly at Big Sister Wei. "Big Sister Wei, are you coming back?" Big Sister Wei looked at him like she was looking at a fool. "Go back? Only idiots will go back." Sister Wei sneered. By following Su Luo, she could eat fragrant meat and drink good alcohol, play with spirit pets, have fights, and unconsciously improve her cultivation. Was there anything better than this? Thinking of this, Big Sister Wei stared at Xiao Wu fiercely, as if he was a bad guy tearing apart the close relation she had with Su Luo. The angry, fierce glare made Xiao Wu shiver and dared not speak even half a word. Su Luo looked at her passively and shook her head helplessly. She looked at Xiao Wu and a smile flashed across her eyes and asked, "Why were you coughing just now? It seemed like there was something you wanted to say." Xiao Wu remembered the conversation between the two of them just now. He coughed again because of excitement. The two unscrupulous women waited quietly and watched him cough. Xiao Wu knew that neither of these women were sympathetic. "Come on, say it. Maybe I am in a happy mood and can reward you with a master-level spirit essence pill so that you can get out alive." Su Luo smiled like a sly fox. When Xiao Wu heard this, his eyes lit up slightly, and he immediately said, "Don't you feel a powerful pressure?" He just heard it. Su Luo said that there seemed to be, but Big Sister Wei didn't feel it at all. Su Luo looked at him without answering. Xiao Wu then described it by gesturing with his hands and feet. It was an extremely powerful spiritual fluctuation, like a big mountain that suddenly pressed down, and the gravity in the air was many times heavier. He watched Su Luo and Big Sister Wei look calm, and his voice gradually lowered with a touch of depression. "You didn't even feel it?" This was the difference between the strong and the weak. Like the rest of the candidates, a few of them might rush quickly and run up with just a few steps. However, on this second level, he was out of breath on taking just one step. Su Luo asked about the key point again. "Tell me about this assessment." "About what?" Xiao Wu asked. "Just talk about it." Su Luo took out the stool and dragged Big Sister Wei to sit down in front of Xiao Wu, ready to hear the story with great interest. Xiao Wu almost rolled his eyes when he saw Su Luo's behavior. He has been through the assessments many times, but one who went through the Tower of Trials as leisurely and comfortably as this pretty girl, he hasn't seen one yet. Was this the fearlessness of the ignorant? Xiao Wu started talking about the rules of the assessment. Chapter 2068, Surmounting All Difficulties too, so that's how it was. Su Luo nodded slightly. When she reached the second floor, she had only barely sensed the presence of a weak suppression force. It seemed that she was much stronger than many others. "Then what about you?" Su Luo asked. "As long as I can hold out until the Tower of Trials concludes the exam, we will all be sent outside. The duration for the exam is always 12 hours. Xiao Wu said with gasping breaths. Su Luo nodded and threw him a master-level spirit restoration pill. Then she pulled Big Sister Wei along and began walking upstairs. The total duration was only 12 hours. The closer they got to the top, the more difficult it would get. So they had to hurry. The two people reached the third floor very quickly. Compared to the empty second floor, there were many more people on the third floor. Su Luo estimated visually that there were at least a few hundred people. These people were all sitting on the floor. Fine beads of sweat had emerged on their faces, and their complexions were very pale. They were putting in great effort to withstand the tremendous spirit suppression force. Su Luo did not leave immediately. Instead, she closed her eyes and felt the suppression force of a natural spiritual force. She didn't know where this suppression force was coming from. It seemed to be spread evenly throughout the entire third floor. Su Luo let this spiritual force rush into her body. After that, she realized this suppression force was extremely pure. It gave off a soft sensation like that of the ocean. Su Luo realized that the spiritual force in her mind was giving off a buzza sound. When she observed it again with rapt attention, she unexpectedly discovered that her own spiritual force had made some progress, albeit it was only a very little bit. Su Luo tilted her head and asked her silly big sister, "Do you sense the fluctuations in spiritual powers?" Her silly big sister extracted a chicken leg from the space. While eating the juicy and tasty chicken leg, she looked at Su Luo with a blank expression. "No. What's that? Is it yummy?" Su Luo. Even the spirit-suppressing pressure on the third floor was unexpectedly completely disregarded. Su Luo was simply left speechless. Her existence was a shock to this group of people on the third floor. Yet why was it that Big Sister Wei's existence did not shock her? Su Luo shook her head, and she pulled her silly big sister along. "Come on, let's go look at the fourth floor." To Su Luo, the spirit suppression force on the third floor was still very weak, so it wouldn't help her much. However, it made her look towards the fourth floor with great anticipation. Right after that, Su Luo reached the fourth floor. The moment she entered it, Su Luo's footsteps came to a stop. This was because the spirit suppression force of the fourth floor was suddenly much stronger than that of the third floor. It was to the point where even she could feel the difference. Then, she subconsciously looked towards her silly big sister. Silly big sister Wei threw away the chicken leg bones and sneezed. "Why is it a little cold?" Su Luo. The speechless Su Luo didn't look at her silly big sister again. Instead, she cast her gaze on the space of the fourth floor. There were still many people on this floor. It appeared that there were more than 100 people. Su Luo felt the spirit suppression force for a moment. She looked at some of the people and said inwardly, even if they're just barely able to sit there, they must already possess the strength of a 5-star commander for them to be capable of withstanding the spirit suppression force on the fourth floor. In comparison, Su Luo currently only had the strength of a 6-star commander. However, who asked Su Luo to be unnaturally lucky? She had a portable space, so her spiritual power was far beyond that of those with the same rank as her. Even in comparison to Big Sister Wei, Su Luo was only slightly inferior. Su Luo had entered the fourth floor quietly, but her entrance still startled some people. Chapter 2069. Surmounting all difficulties 3, they had difficulty breathing and couldn't stay standing. In comparison, the other two women looked too relaxed, like they were taking a leisurely stroll in their courtyard. Big Sister. Someone in the crowd recognized Big Sister Wei and yelled out in pleasant surprise. Su Luo's gaze shifted towards the source of the yell. As expected, this happy person was yet another one of Big Sister Wei's old subordinates. Simultaneously, more and more people recognized Big Sister Wei. Big Sister Wei used to be the nightmare of Distal End Mountain. Many people had been robbed by her before, so the people kept a lingering fear in their hearts. Seeing as silly Big Sister Wei stood there steadily like a huge majestic mountain, a feeling of alarm was summoned in the hearts of some people present. Ever since Big Sister Wei disappeared, they had been taking part in beating up her subordinates. No one knew if she would take revenge or not. At this time, that pleasantly surprised person pushed through their pain and rushed over, pouncing excitedly towards silly Big Sister Wei. Unexpectedly, Big Sister Wei scowled with disgust and immediately kicked out with her Fuda. "Eh? Pua? Eh?" Before he even got the chance to hug Big Sister Wei's thigh, this miserable child was kicked and sent flying. Furthermore, Big Sister Wei had been born with godlike strength. How much force would be in this kick? Fortunately, the gravity in this place was several times stronger than outside. After the pitiful little follower was knocked backward, his body moved like it was in a slow-motion replay as he was falling onto the floor slowly. Seeing this situation, Su Luo almost laughed out loud. At this time, silly Big Sister Wei set her halberd down on the floor with a banging sound. Then she shouted explosively, "Whoever dares to come up and say they recognize me will get a hit from this old Wei's halberd again." This crowd of people was truly making silly Big Sister Wei extremely irritated. Seeing Big Sister Wei's irritated and hot-tempered appearance, those little followers who had begun to stir, wanting to find someone to support them, suddenly became spiritless. Each one of them curled up like a lobster, not daring to raise their heads to look at Big Sister Wei. Su Luo applauded Big Sister Wei's actions. In this world, the strong were respected. So, silly Big Sister Wei did not need to waste any words on them. She just needed to directly display her strength, and those evil spirits would automatically scatter and retreat. There was not much reason for them to stay on the fourth floor. Su Luo brought Big Sister Wei along with her to the fifth floor. The fifth floor finally let Su Luo feel some pressure. It was here. The spirit suppression force had naturally gotten heavier again, but it was still not heavy enough to make Su Luo raise her eyebrows in shock. On the other hand, seeing the several tens of people lying on the floor to her left and right made her knit her eyebrows. They were all seriously injured and close to death, as well as dispirited and listless. Moreover, the battle was still in progress. It appeared that there were two competing forces. Of course, Su Luo didn't really know these two forces. She didn't want to participate in this melee, so she wanted to take Big Sister Wei straight to the 6th floor. However, she had barely taken a few steps when the path before her was blocked by 5 people. Su Luo raised her head to look at them. The 5 people had figures that were tall, sturdy, and looked as tough as nails. Their faces were covered with killing intent, making them look very fierce and violent. "Step aside," Su Luo said coldly. "Except for the Hongxing gang and Yulin sect, no one is allowed up to the 6th floor." An icy, arrogant voice rang out from behind the 5 people. When the 5 people heard this voice, they automatically split into 2 lines, making a pathway that was wide enough for 2 people. Seeing the person before her, Su Luo's gaze flickered slightly. That person was a man who appeared to be 20-odd years old. Of course, Su Luo didn't actually know his real age. This was because once a person reached the commander rank, their complexion would practically never change. When this person saw Su Luo's appearance, he was suddenly astonished. Immediately, his tone took on a hint of ambiguity, and the expression in his eyes became lecherous as he looked at Su Luo. Chapter 2070. Surmounting all difficulties. For Su Luo narrowed her eyes and frowned, but she didn't say anything. "The area ahead is occupied by my Hongxing gang and the Yulin sect. Forget about going up there. Besides, the pressure there is very strong. It won't be good for you, such a delicate girl. You might as well wait here. When the time is up, you naturally can go on. Until that time, I, Ouyang Murong, promise that no one dares to hurt you here." Ouyang Murong slowly said, believing himself to have come up with the best solution. Su Luo coldly sneered and glared at him. She left him with a few simple words. "Get out of my way." Astounded by what Su Luo just said, Ouyang Murong's face changed slowly. "Little girl, it is said that smart people can read the room. You will suffer if you can't even recognize what is good and what is bad. No matter how skillful you are, do you think you can take on all of them?" Su Luo coldly sneered. "You 2 gangs, are you guys here to clear the road? We don't dare to. We don't have a lot of men, let alone the space to train and practice." Ouyang Murong let out a polite laugh as he spoke. "We do not dare. We just happen to be a lot of men without a chance and space to train. We're just dusting off our skills and training for a bit at times like this." Ouyang Murong politely laughed as he spoke. Su Luo gave him a cold shrug. "How many people are there?" "If there were too many people, it would be hard to fight even with Big Sister Wei." Ouyang Murong confidently replied. "Not many. There are 5 people. In other words, there were 10 people on the 6th floor. The first 3 who enter the 7th floor and get the battle flag are eligible to participate in the Tower of Trials of the downstream mountain. Little girl, don't forget, chat with this brother here." Ouyang Murong turned to Su Luo, reaching for her shoulder. However, he didn't place his hand on her shoulder. Puff, with a soft sound. Ouyang Murong's hand was cut off. Su Luo appreciated the cold sharpness of the dagger and played around with it in her hands while Ouyang Murong screamed loudly due to his extreme pain. "Fortunately for you, my Nangong is not here right now. Otherwise, your hand wouldn't be the only thing that gets cut off." Su Luo slowly cleaned the dagger inch by inch with a white silk cloth which was as thin as a cicada wing. The white silk cloth smeared with blood was instantly burnt to ashes by the fire. "You!" Ouyang Murong's fiery gaze bore into Su Luo. He didn't expect that Su Luo would draw the dagger and cut so quickly, ruthlessly, and accurately. "Fifth young master." A group of people who saw the blood spewing out of Ouyang Murong's missing hand exclaimed. Afterward, everyone immediately stopped fighting and rushed towards Su Luo and silly Big Sister Wei. At this time, Big Sister Wei, who had already been standing by Su Luo, shifted into a fighting stance while loudly screaming, "If you want to die, then come here." Seeing Sister Wei's move fluidly into a fighting stance kept them at a distance, because this level was already very difficult for them. The powerful suppression force already slowed their speed and movement. Looking at how Big Sister Wei moved as smooth as flowing water. What did this mean? The fifth layer didn't hinder her at all. However, Ouyang Morong, who was in severe pain, did not think clearly. He angrily shouted, "Kill! Kill them for me!" Ouyang Morong's men looked at each other and wondered if they should attack or not. However, they still rushed up with their weapons in the end. Boom! Boom! After a bit of chaos, everyone at the scene fell to the ground. Only Sister Wei and Su Luo stood firmly on the spot. Chapter 2071. Surmounting all difficulties. 5. Su Luo scornfully looked at Ouyang Morong, who got beaten up by Big Sister Wei. She coldly sneered, "Open it." After that, surmounting all difficulties, he walked slowly towards it. Ouyang Morong witnessed Su Luo's silhouette with eyes full of terror that wouldn't dissipate. How could it be like this? How could there be someone so powerful, defying the laws of nature? How did he not know? From the beginning of the fight to the end, it had only lasted as much as the time it took to finish a cup of tea. No, it couldn't be called a battle. From the beginning to the end, this mad woman attacked people, swinging her halberd ferociously and fatally. The strange-looking girl never appeared to be moving ever so slightly. That girl was the leader of a small hunting gang. How could the members be so committed, voluntarily bodyguarding and fighting the strange little girl? What kind of background did this lady have? Ouyang Morong pondered, but could not find an answer. Besides his current frustration, he worried that with these two members already participating, could they possibly still be in the top 3? The 6th floor. Su Luo approached the 6th floor. Her back was forced to bend. A mental pressure as strong as the Taishan mountain flooded into the place. Very good. Su Luo curved the corner of her lips, lifting it into a smile. With such surrounding pressure, she finally felt some of it seep into her body. Su Luo straightened her waist, breathed in deeply, feeling pressured as she was near it, but not enough to stop her journey, so without turning her head around, she decided not to leave. But there was someone that had stopped the ladies. "How did you guys come up? Are all the people under Ouyang Morong dead?" An unruly voice resounded into Su Luo's ears. Su Luo tilted her head to look back. A handsome, strong-looking man of around 30 years old with an extremely malicious expression coldly stared at Su Luo. Behind him were 2 people. "Are you talking about Ouyang Morong?" Su Luo, genuinely but coldly, gazed at him. Suddenly, the handsome man had an uneasy feeling. "Are you the leader?" Su Luo slowly spoke up. "You? What did you do to him?" Only then did the handsome man realize that when this beautiful girl entered the 6th floor, she was not even out of breath, which really surprised him. "Don't worry, you can't die from this." Su Luo smiled faintly. "If you don't want to follow in his footsteps, just let it go. Let it go. In your dreams." Boss Morong laughed coldly. At the same time, he greeted the boss of the Yulin sect. "Hey you, this lady would like to cross. May she have your permissions?" Boss Yulin sneered and walked over. "There are only 3 spots. What do you say?" The 2 smiled at each other, tacitly. So Luo had originally intended to let them fight each other and then reap the benefits. However, now, it seemed that although their 2 groups were fighting, they had a tacit understanding of each other and were not easily deceived. Regardless, their strength was well respected. In the face of great power, all conspiracies and tricks were all paper tigers. Su Luo had always believed in this sentence. Because of this, Su Luo scornfully curled the end of her lips. "You don't want to let us go? Then let's fight." Before he could say anything, she and Big Sister Wei attacked both sides, left to right. Su Luo chose Boss Morong, while Big Sister Wei chased after Boss Yulin. The strength of Boss Morong was the same as Big Sister Wei's when she first met Su Luo. Chapter 2072. Surmounting all difficulties. 6. After almost 3 rounds. This is not possible. Boss Morong couldn't believe what he was seeing. Opening his eyes as wide as he could, he intensely stared at Su Luo. Since when did a genius like this exist in distal End Mountain? How did he not know about this? That little girl looked like she was a 6-star commander level, but her close combat skills kept pushing him backwards. Who are you? Honestly, who are you? Boss Morong was screaming through his exhausted, rusty voice. Su Luo, new candidate. I joined less than a month ago, Su Luo said. New candidate? How is this possible? Boss Morong was so shocked. How was a new candidate even better than him? Boss Morong, the boss of this whole area. Who would tolerate this upstart? At the same time, Boss Morong was exchanging glances with Boss Yulin. From Boss Yulin's glance, all he could sense was fear. Compared with him, Boss Yulin was really pathetic. He got beaten so hard by the other madwoman that he couldn't even defend himself. Not only was he always on the back foot, he was so pathetic that he was running away. That madwoman brought such a heavy halberd, yet she was comfortable following him like she was taking a walk. Stop, stop! I surrender! Boss Yulin put both of his hands up in the air. But the silly big sister Wei didn't even care if he surrendered or not. She was chasing after him as if she was chasing after ducks, pushing him down to the 6th level. Poor Boss Yulin ran like that till he was on the 5th floor. How humiliating. Are you surprised? Su Luo giggled when she looked at Boss Morong. Boss Morong's jaw was dropped to the floor, completely speechless. These two women were so powerful. How could anyone else swallow with this? Boss Morong turned on his nice tone, started to negotiate. Miss, since there are 3 slots for the entrance to Downstream Mountain, the 2 of you can have the first 2. The next one can be mine. Do me a favor. How does that sound? Su Luo raised the corner of her mouth into a faint smile while looking at Boss Morong. Why do I have to do you a favor? If you let me go today, you will earn good karma. You don't want to be cruel, don't you? If you actually do me a favor, the entire Hongxing gang will help you in the future. Unexpectedly, Boss Morong didn't even get to finish his words. Su Luo already waved her hand to interrupt him. Do you think that I will stay at this disgusting distal end mountain after I finish this assessment? Are you cursing me? Su Luo coldly said. Boss Morong's temples were shaking. At this distal end mountain, there were so many people that begged for the opportunity to do a favor for Ouyang Morong but couldn't. Such a little brat. Even though he was furious inside, he was very conscious of what could happen if he angered them. He tried to continue to sweet talk with a smiling expression. If so, then what would you want in exchange? Su Luo thought for a moment, then said, the communication amulet. After hearing this, Boss Morong's heart sank. The communication amulet couldn't be traded with experience points. Furthermore, you couldn't rob someone of it, because once it was bound, there was no other way to use it but to destroy it. Soul essence? Su Luo slowly asked. Boss Morong felt like he was about to burst into tears. Soul essence could be exchanged with experience points, but his level wasn't high enough to afford this exchange. Not only that, wasn't it extremely expensive? If so, then there isn't any way for us to collaborate. Go away. Su Luo pointed at the pathway Big Sister Wei was guarding. The pathetic Boss Morong was looking at Su Luo. Su Luo impatiently gestured a signal. The strong-looking Big Sister Wei quickly rushed over, used one hand to pick up Boss Morong, and threw him to the lower level. Chapter 2073. Surmounting All Difficulties 7. Looking at the empty 6th floor, Su Luo laughed and said, It's no wonder that the 2 groups want to clear out this place. Sure enough, the feeling of having the whole place to ourselves is pretty nice. Su Luo, along with Big Sister Wei, walked quickly up to the 7th floor. This might be the emptiest the Tower of Trials had been since the beginning of its history. Surprisingly, the 6th floor only had 2 people. Stepping onto the 7th floor, Su Luo started slowing her pace. It was because she could feel a tremendous spirit suppression force attacking her from the front. That terrifying fluctuation swept out, seemingly wanting to disintegrate her body. Su Luo paled. Her soul was worn out, yet the pressure was magnifying still. Su Luo covered her head, furrowing her eyebrows. Big Sister Wei, who was scared by Su Luo's reaction, asked hurriedly, What's the matter? Are you very unwell? She knew Su Luo was severely injured before this assessment. Su Luo waved her hands, signaling that she was fine. Go get the victory flag, Su Luo told Big Sister Wei. At this point, the spirit suppression force was immense. Just upon entering, Su Luo, for a moment, almost got knocked outside just from the high pressure. Luckily, she was able to pull together her spiritual power and keep her feet steadily in place like a boulder. This path seems a bit rough. Big Sister Wei walked with great difficulty toward the innermost area where the victory flag was. The victory flag had been placed in a mountain peak very high up. To take it away, one had to ascend one step at a time. Su Luo was in no rush to go up. She stood in place, letting the pressure cover her whole body. After a moment, she slowly opened her bright eyes and moved forward with the first step. The suppression force here was countless times stronger than that of the 6th floor, and it was extremely viscous. It felt like she was walking through a mass of honey, making it very difficult for her to continue onward. As for Big Sister Wei, the spirit suppression force here was also somewhat of a challenge for her. That was why she was walking very slowly but very steadily. Not long after, Su Luo and Big Sister Wei walked shoulder to shoulder, both extremely slow but consistent. On the 5th floor, Boss Yu Lin and Boss Murong looked at each other. After that, both of them charged upwards with great tacit understanding. In any case, the two crazy women were going to take the top 2 spots. Didn't that mean there was still one spot left? With that, both people rushed ahead towards the 7th floor like a gust of wind. But right as they entered, bang, an invisible wave of elastic force sent both people flying back out forcefully. They tumbled down the stairs and rolled to the floor, unconscious. On the 5th floor, countless shocked people saw how the two leaders unconsciously laid on the floor. They could only look upwards to the 7th floor with respect. Those two women, so powerful. The 7th level. Without a word and straight-faced, both of them continued forward. It was only a short 1,000 steps, yet it had taken both people half an hour. The sweat on Su Luo's forehead trickled down her face. Her lips were cracked with dry blood, and her back was slightly hunched over. Her soul was greatly injured. At this point, an unbearable pain caused her whole body to tremble. Su Luo's eyes were bloodshot, but her eyes still showed unshakable persistence. Drip drop, each drop of blood, combined with sweat, rolled down to the ground. Upon landing on the hot, damp ground, it instantly evaporated. The path that Su Luo had taken was mottled with traces of blood. It was shocking to look at. Big Sister Wei lowered her head, feeling awful as she looked at Su Luo. "I'll carry you." Being carried by Big Sister Wei, Su Luo felt much more relaxed. Chapter 2074. Surmounting All Difficulties. 8. This was an examination. Even if she was severely injured, she wouldn't cheat to pass. She was about to collapse from the spirit suppression force, but it also cleansed her body. Ultimately, the most important part was to test her willpower. So, she could only depend on herself in order to continue on this path. An extremely severe pain spread from her ribs to her skull. Her ears were ringing constantly, and her vision was also blurring. She was slowly approaching her limits. Boom! Su Luo could feel the thread inside her body snap. Afterwards, her body seemed to relax slightly. Su Luo raised the corners of her mouth into a smile. Sure enough, it was just like that. Previously, she was actually capable of entering the 7th-star commander level when she was at the outer magical beast zone, having taken the advancing pill. However, she got interrupted by Qing Yi, so she remained at the peak of the 6th star. Unexpectedly, after experiencing the spirit suppression force's purification, the thread in her body was finally snapped. Furthermore, Su Luo entered 7th-star commander level in one go. If anyone wanted to discuss the speed in advancing levels, there was absolutely no one that could compare with Su Luo. Su Luo moved her innate spiritual power around, slowly straightening her body. Her strained face was also loosening bit by bit. Since she advanced to the 7th-star commander level, she would be slightly more prepared for participating in downstream Mountains Tower trials. Keeping her happiness inside, Su Luo put on a serious expression and focused on finding solutions for the situation ahead. At this moment, Su Luo and Big Sister Wei had arrived just below the victory flag and turned their heads up to look at it. The victory flag was located on the top of a decorative hill that was as tall as two people. It didn't seem easy to take down. The decorative hill wasn't that tall. If it was under normal circumstances, a casual jump would be sufficient to reach it. However, this was the 7th level. The closer it was to the center of this floor, the stronger the repelling force was. If they weren't paying attention for just a moment, they would have been directly knocked out. How could they reach the flag? Surely just jumping wouldn't do the trick. As Su Luo was hesitating, Big Sister Wei squatted down and patted Su Luo's lower thighs. "Stand on top of me." Big Sister Wei seemed slow-witted in daily life, but in crucial moments, she wasn't slow-witted at all. Her idea was so simple, yet so effective. Su Luo thought for a moment and eventually gave in to the idea. After Su Luo got on a Big Sister Wei's broad shoulders, Big Sister Wei stood up and lifted Su Luo's body up. However, Su Luo's face turned abnormally pale. No wonder the victory flag was located here. It turned out the closer you were to the victory flag, the more terrifying the surrounding suppression force was. Su Luo felt like her body had been ruthlessly snapped at the waist, and every bone and joint on her body was making weird noises. Big Sister Wei was extremely worried about Su Luo and wanted to put her down. However, Big Sister Wei was stopped by Su Luo's whisper. "Don't waste all of our work because of me." Su Luo was sure that her body would only allow her to approach the flag once because she wouldn't be able to endure it the next time. With her trembling hands, Su Luo struggled to reach for the victory flag. As soon as she landed her hand on the flag, a powerful beam of white light shot straight out, extremely blinding. As a reflex, Su Luo used her hand to cover her eyes. If she was a fraction of a second slower, she would have been blinded. She then felt the environment buzzing, the world spinning, and her vision blackened. When she opened her eyes again, she realized her surroundings had changed. She wasn't in the 7th level anymore. She was in the square where Abbess Miju had tried to stop her. At this moment, there were so many people crowding the square, and they all seemed to be tired. As soon as Su Luo and Big Sister Wei appeared, they shot terrified looks at the two all at once. What was going on? Did she succeed or fail? Su Luo felt extremely confused. Chapter 2075. Surmounting All Difficulties 9. I won't die from this, Su Luo said as she weakly waved her hands. At this point, all the glances focused on their faces. Su Luo began to realize that her entire body almost had no energy left, lowering her voice as she asked Big Sister Wei, "What is going on? We've been transported out? Did it mean that we completed the mission? Or did we fail?" She only remembered that her hand had just touched the victory flag. Then she fainted away. Big Sister Wei shook her head. Since there wasn't anything to do, Big Sister Wei promptly brought out a big piece of meat from her inventory. Momentarily escaping into her own world, she ate happily and leisurely, focusing on nothing but the meat in front of her. Su Luo was stunned. She suddenly realized that she was very envious of Big Sister Wei. No matter when it was, her first expression was dull and confused. Then, she would shake her head and then eat. If that didn't satisfy her, she would bring her halberd with her to go out and discipline a group of bandits. This was the sort of life everyone yearned to live. While Su Luo was sighing again and again, the people in the square were looking at her with gazes that were getting increasingly fervent. Everyone started gossiping in hushed tones. Just the two of them? They're the ones who kicked the Hongxing gang and Yulin sect to the lower level? Possibly. When did that Big Sister Wei become so powerful? To think that she's even stronger than Boss Murong and Boss Yulin? The one who is even more powerful is that pretty little girl. Rumor says that she is a new candidate who just entered not even a month ago, and yet she can beat the 7th level. Such an admirable person. Originally, the Hongxing gang and Yulin sect planned to determine themselves as the winners. However, everything is good now. The two leaders are even lying unconscious on the ground. I heard it was when they were sneaking up to the 7th level that they were kicked down by that young lady named Su Luo. Thanks to her extremely sensitive hearing, Su Luo heard everything very clearly and could not help but wryly smile to herself. She had not actually kicked those two leaders, but it seemed like they were crediting her for it. When one was infested with too many lice, one would no longer feel the itch. When one had too much debt, one would no longer worry about it. As for Su Luo, she now had so many enemies that she neither felt itchy nor worried, and just acted like everything was fine. At this exact moment, an abnormal fluctuation swept through the air, and a silhouette suddenly appeared. Looking at the middle-aged woman, Abbess Miju's image appeared in Su Luo's mind. This woman's serious face was so similar to Abbess Miju. Seeing her triggered a headache in Su Luo. The manager of the Tower of Trials, why was she here? Furthermore, Abbess Miju, step by step, walked towards Su Luo's side of the square. What did she want to do? Su Luo's expression darkened, and she tugged at Big Sister Wei, who was intensely focused on eating her chicken drumstick. Abbess Miju quietly stood in front of Su Luo, her expression still as serious as before. She cleared her throat with a cough. Congratulations to you two on passing the Tower Trials. Now, you have the opportunity to enter the downstream mountains Tower of Trials. Abbess Miju's voice was as cold as before. However, Su Luo realized that there seemed to be less malice in Abbess Miju's gaze and words. Su Luo stared at her fixedly, curious of her true intentions. Abbess Miju felt awkward from being stared at. She then cleared her throat again and presented an object. This is your reward from this assessment. Take it. Reward from the assessment? Su Luo happily looked at the small embroidered box. It was the reward that convinced her to participate in the assessment despite her injured soul. With a great amount of luck, she finally got it. As soon as she got a chance, she would give this to Ziyin. Chapter 2076. Surmounting All Difficulties 10. What's going on? Su Luo's eyes were like the fresh frost from a cold wind. At that moment, her icy eyes were staring at the Abbess Miju. Abbess Miju's heart trembled. She subconsciously took a step back. It was a piercing stare, as if her dark pupils were drawing out the darkest hidden secret from the human heart. Abbess Miju could only feel the cold sweat on her forehead. Speak! Su Luo shouted angrily. Abbess Miju clenched her fists tightly, and with all her courage, spoke with a cold voice. This was given from above. How would I know? Who gave it to you? Su Luo stared at her coldly. Luo, young Master Luo, Abbess Miju responded timidly. Luo-i-chen? How could it be him? A strange color flashed in Su Luo's eyes. Her eyes were still fixed on Abbess Miju without blinking. Then she telepathically contacted Luo-i-chen. Brother Luo, shouldn't the reward be the communication amulet? Su Luo remembered clearly that Luo-i-chen had passed this information to her personally. After a while, Luo-i-chen's message came. You do need the soul essence. 7 words were not many, but they were cold like ice, without any sign of compassion. These 7 words were enough to tell Su Luo that Luo-i-chen had actually replaced the communication amulet. I really do need the communication amulet. Su Luo tightly grasped the green communication amulet till her fingers turned as white as a sheet of paper. There is still another chance, he coldly responded. What chance? Su Luo replied in an unfriendly tone. Downstream mountain, remember what you said. Su Luo coldly stared at the communication amulet, as if it was Luo-i-chen himself. The more Su Luo was in contact with Luo-i-chen, the more she realized he was a mysterious person. His cultivation level was unfathomable, and his status was beyond all things. Each guest was no better than the other. Whatever, wait till she entered the top 100 and the core of the genius training camp. Wouldn't she know everything then? Su Luo told herself. Abbess Miju looked at Su Luo and kindly reminded her, Miss Su, it is 1,000 miles down the mountain. Don't delay, or else you may miss the chance to enter the testing round. Su Luo frowned slightly. Abbess Miju had been brimming with ill intent towards her before, but now kindly reminded her. For what reason? Instinctively, Su Luo suddenly asked, Tell the person who is hiding at the top of the tower and shooting arrows at people. He'll be better off hiding forever. Otherwise, Abbess Miju's face went stiff and turned pale in a flash. Abbess Miju truly knew who that person was. Su Luo coldly sneered. She was testing the waters in order to make Abbess Miju spill. If you are fully prepared and strong enough, then he will be your strongest opponent in this test. Abbess Miju hesitated for a long time and finally said some ambiguous words. This sentence not only pleased Su Luo, who was under the protection of Luo Yichen, but also did not reveal too much information to offend him. Abbess Miju praised her own quick-wittedness, enough to have a chance to be that person's opponent. Su Luo coldly sneered. Take these. Abbess Miju gave Su Luo 2 jade jewels. These were tokens for clearing the assessment. Only with this token could one participate and learn more in the assessment once one went to Downstream Mountain. Although there is a chance to participate in the assessment of Downstream Mountain, there are only 1 or 2 people who can go every year. Abbess Miju looked at Su Luo with a pessimistic glare. After taking the token given by Abbess Miju, Su Luo sneered and quickly led Big Sister Wei away. Was this person the strongest opponent in this test? Who knew? However, were her opponents not just the people from Downstream Mountain? Chapter 2077, Downstream Mountain 1. They traveled the length of the mountain, carrying along everyone's anger and hatred, as well as a great deal of anticipation. Su Luo and Big Sister Wei disembarked the small metal boat in front of the tower-like structure at the foot of the mountain. At this time, 1 full day had sailed past. As it was early morning, the public square in front of the tower was empty. Su Luo put away the small metal boat and proceeded to adjust her mood. Soul Essence was truly a quality object. Despite being in possession of only one, her damaged soul had been repaired in just 1 day. Su Luo believed that given enough Soul Essence, her injuries will surely get better very quickly. Su Luo was holding the Soul Essence in her arms, and since she had trained in the small boat on the way there, half of the Soul Essence had already been used up. Su Luo had seen the optical tablet previously to check if she could purchase more Soul Essence, but the first condition to buy it wasn't something she could achieve at this point. Only the top 100 candidates from the Genius Training Camp were eligible to purchase goods, along with other privileges. There were narrow strips of gray exhibits that made Su Luo almost drool with desire. This time, she must be in the top 100. Su Luo tightened her fist. Apart from Su Luo herself, no one would have guessed that she wasn't just aiming for Downstream Mountain, but also Midstream and Upstream Mountains. Although Su Luo revealed her talents and shone on the Distal End Mountain had always been a place which everyone looked down upon. Furthermore, they were outside of the top 300, so even though they were able to get first and second place on Distal End Mountain, Su Luo and Big Sister Wei would still be unable to make it onto the Roaming Dragon list. Because the Roaming Dragon list only included the first 300. After participating in the Tower of Trials of Downstream Mountain and comparing with other participants, could the system give out the final rankings based on one's own strength and performance in the tower? As it was still early, none of the assessors had arrived yet. Su Luo sat on the ground, legs crossed, and soon entered into a calm state again. The people on Downstream Mountain were much stronger than those on Distal End Mountain, so this assessment would definitely not be as easy as the Tower of Trials of Distal End Mountain. Su Luo made sure she was mentally prepared. Little by little, time ticked by. The darkness of dawn passed, penetrated by the first rays of early light, piercing through the thin morning mist as a hazy orange hue washed over the earth, draping Su Luo in a golden coat of light. Su Luo's eyes were still tightly closed shut, still immersed in her own inner world, unaffected by any changes in the outside world. There was a thin veil of cold sweat on her forehead, and her once beautiful red lips were now pale as snow. Big Sister Wei brandished her halberd, circling Su Luo in strides, eyes gleaming, careful and vigilant. At any other time, Big Sister Wei would be silly and carefree, only caring to munch on chicken legs. However, When Su Luo was in training, the silly big sister was more serious than anyone else, eyes as sharp as an eagle's. So now, if anyone dared to show even the slightest hint of malice towards Su Luo, Big Sister Wei would not hesitate to smash their skulls in. Little by little, time continued to pass. The time for assessment drew ever closer. One by one, candidates began to trickle in. They witnessed Big Sister Wei standing in such a ridiculous pose, stood erect as a statue with gigantic halberd in hand, shining eyes leering from side to side, as domineering as an empress patrolling her territory. Seeing such a silly sight, they undoubtedly decided to bully and attempted to strike fear into these candidates whom they deemed as weak and inferior. Chapter 2078, Downstream Mountain 2, Blanca 2107, and so, they subconsciously surrounded Su Luo. As the square was endlessly large, there were countless places one could sit. Settling down to their spots, these candidates wasted no time in being idle and immediately began to meditate with their legs crossed and eyes closed. If Su Luo had seen this, she wouldn't have known whether to laugh, because these candidates were no different than those who, in her past life, frantically tried to recite their lessons at the very last minute before an exam. And so, Su Luo's behavior wasn't at all strange. Instead, it was the silly Big Sister Wei who was the odd one out. With her majestic appearance and wild gestures, she left a big impression on many. As time passed, more and more candidates gathered, filling the air with noise and chatter. It was very difficult to continue meditating in such a noisy environment, and so many contestants opened their eyes. Right at that moment, a group of people flew in from midair, led by a white-haired old man. The man looked about 70 or 80 years old, his hair and beard silvery white, but his face was a lifeful flush. He seemed to be in very high spirits, something which wasn't at all indicative of his old age. Behind him followed 4 pupils, boys of no more than 11 or 12, all of whom looked handsome with their youthful faces and light gait. Seeing the old man, everyone, no matter what position they were in, stood straight up and saluted at once. They then all bowed respectfully. The old man smiled, his face kind. The January assessment is about to begin. Now then, his eyes swept through each of the candidates' faces until suddenly his kind smile wavered and his brows furrowed slightly. All the candidates present focused their attention on the old man, who was fixedly staring at a certain spot on the ground with a frown, making everyone uncomfortable. With a rustle, they followed the old man's gaze. It was easy to see what he had been looking at, because there was but one girl who was still meditating on her own, with her elder sister standing firm beside. Who are those women? They seem new around here. Do you know them? I've never seen them before. Where did they come from? Aren't they from Distal End Mountain? Bah! What kind of candidate from Distal End Mountain has that kind of guts? Wasn't she at all fazed with fear when she saw us earlier? Now that the master is here, she even dares to sit and meditate with her eyes closed? Does she have a death wish? Let's see how the master will punish her. Not only does she not look at us, downstream mountain folks, in the eye, she even ignores the great master. Okay, suit herself. Even if the master can't discipline her, as soon as she enters the Tower of Trials, I will. At first, the gossip were mere whispers, but it soon grew into blatant, loud conversations. Despite all their words and threats, Su Luo sat still, steadfast as a rock, with eyes shut and 5 senses closed to the outside world, which she knew nothing about, much less reacted to. It was as if these people were throwing curses at a stone, but the stone did not move. It was rather annoying. The master's eyes flashed with disdain, but only for a brief moment. Soon he was back to being a kind old man again. Waiting for the crowd's scolding chatter towards Su Luo to die down, the old man coughed and waved his sleeves. I won't say much. Each month there will be an assessment. You all know the rules, so there isn't a need for words. The white-haired old man decidedly ignored Su Luo and Big Sister Wei, the 2 candidates who came from Distal End Mountain. He cleared his throat and spoke in a serious tone. Now line up for the ballot. All of you. Whichever group you draw, stay in it. Begin. Chapter 2079, Downstream Mountain 3. Each of the four young pupils carried an exquisite bag that contained a jade pendant. Those examinees were all familiar with it. One by one, they skillfully pulled open their bag and then dripped their blood into it. With her round eyes, Big Sister Wei glanced around at the lively group of candidates. She then turned her head to look at Su Luo, who was still immersed in cultivation and unaware of the current situation. In that moment, the expression in Big Sister Wei's eyes showed that she was lost and puzzled. She was in a state of confusion. People in Downstream Mountain knew this well and understood why she was like this. However, none of them came forward to tell Big Sister Wei what to do. It was not only because these two ladies offended the Guardian right at the beginning. Most importantly, it was because the people on Downstream Mountain had always looked down on the people from Distal End Mountain. There were assigned group numbers that were carved on the jade pendant, as well as the numbers that would be drawn by each person. Those candidates dropped their own blood on the jade pendant. It then allowed them to sense the existence of their group members. So, naturally, all people that belonged to the same group would come together. There were 200 to 300 candidates from the roaming dragon list that were living on Downstream Mountain. In addition, there were also 3 other candidates from Distal End Mountain. Some of the candidates had already gone out to perform some tasks, while others were at the critical points of their advancement level. Therefore, the Downstream Mountain only had 95 candidates, including Su Luo and Big Sister Wei. The total count was 98 to be exact. There were 10 groups in this examination, and each group had 10 individuals. So, the last group only had 8 individuals. After most of the candidates entered, Sister Wei still sat there with Su Luo, as she showed no signs of awakening. At this time, there were only 6 candidates left in the entire square, plus Su Luo and Big Sister Wei. Seeing that Big Sister Wei didn't plan to come up, one of the young pupils' eyes flashed a cold sneer. Then he put the bag away and prepared to leave. Right at this moment, a young man who was standing not far from Big Sister Wei said in a low, upset voice, "Hurry up and get the registered jade pendant. Otherwise, there is no way you could take the exam if you're too late." The young man had never seen such a stupid person. She rushed to the square from thousands of miles away, but didn't even get the jade pendant. Instead, she just waited in a daze for someone to give it to her. The young man was not actually reminding her out of kindness. He just had the bad luck to be assigned to the last group, and this group had only 6 people so far. How could such a team beat others? Although he looked down on the people who came from Distal End Mountain, he thought it would still be good to use them as a shield. Therefore, he kindly opened his mouth to remind Big Sister Wei about it. Even though Big Sister Wei was not quick-witted, she was sometimes quick to respond. After listening to the reminder from the young man, she looked at Su Luo and then thought about what Abbess Mija said before you. Something about registering, but not reporting. Therefore, she quickly dashed toward the young pupil. Just as the young pupil was about to put his bag away, he suddenly felt his hands were clamped by an iron grip. He grimaced in pain with his mouth open. By the time he recovered, the bag had already been snatched by Big Sister Wei. Big Sister Wei took out 2 jade pendants and threw the bag onto the young pupil's face. Then with another swish, she shot back over to Su Luo's side. This whole thing happened so unimaginably fast, as if it occurred during the snapping of one's fingers. The young pupil was stunned and grasped the bag down from his face. Only then did he realize that he should be angry, so he muttered bitterly, "This broken team can't win unless God opens his eyes." Bah! The Guardian glanced at him, but she didn't stop him from cursing. Instead, she smiled lightly. Why bother lowering yourself to the same level as those uncouth people? Chapter 2080, Downstream Mountain 4. Following along with what the people in front of her are doing, Big Sister Wei smeared a drop of her blood onto the jade pendant. Although she only felt a flash in her mind, it seems like there were many new items appearing in her consciousness. After that, she continued according to the procedure. She took out a fine needle and extracted some blood from Su Luo's fingers. Even then, Su Luo didn't seem to be waking up. The teenage boy who reminded Big Sister Wei previously couldn't help but frown. If Su Luo's conditions are as bad as it is, what's the point of bringing her inside? Just leave her here. Let's go inside quickly. Right after saying that, he wanted to drag Big Sister Wei away with him. After listening to his intention of leaving Su Luo there, Big Sister Wei immediately got furious, and her pair of tiger eyes flashed with a cold light. She grabbed the teenage boy and yelled, "Say that one more time. Who do you want to leave right here?" Without finishing her sentence, Big Sister Wei had already smashed the skinny teenage boy into the air. His head hit the ground so hard that it created a big hole. What a strong woman! The other 5 people from the rest of the team all secretly thought that this Tower of Trials would no longer be an absolutely undefeatable one with this powerful Big Sister Wei around. They were so excited that they clasped their hands and looked at Big Sister Wei with eyes sparkling in happiness. The teenage boy stood back up gloomily. He was so angry, but he didn't dare to express it. All he could do was take a deep breath and return to his position in the team while furiously staring down at Big Sister Wei. After some thought, Big Sister Wei brought out a bundle of rope from her inventory and tightly secured Su Luo on her back. Seeing Big Sister Wei was intending to bring Su Luo inside with her, everyone began to dissuade her in succession. "Big Sister, why do you want to put yourself through this? This miss is in a meditative state right now. If you forcefully bring her inside, aren't you akin to killing her?" "Exactly. Big Sister, if you forcefully bring her inside, not only is there no benefit, there is so much harm for her. Furthermore, by bringing along such a burden, you won't be able to unleash your true power. Why don't we just put her outside for now? You can bring her back in after we win." Big Sister Wei's eyebrows were pushed together so hard that it could crush an ant. Little Luo must not be left here under any circumstances, Big Sister Wei said, as she banged her halberd onto the ground heavily, which caused loud rumbles. She then announced in an imposing and majestic manner, "If little Luo isn't going, then I am not going either." The 6 teammates were stunned. How could there be such a stupid woman in the world? In this cold-blooded and cruel world, how could such a thing like affection exist? Didn't she know that friends were made to be betrayed later on? All 6 of the teammates spent all their words to discourage Big Sister Wei. Yet Big Sister Wei felt that they were extremely annoying. She looked at them with freezing cold eyes. "All of you, shut up. If you don't want to go with us, then leave." Leading the way, Big Sister Wei stepped forth with her firm big strides, as if she wanted to fly into the Tower of Trials. Behind her, the teammates looked at each other in dismay. What do we do now? They were helpless. They could only accept the fact that they were bringing along a burden, Su Luo, with them. The downstream mountain's Tower of Trials was different from the last one. Instead of an individual assessment like last time, it was a team assessment this time. After participating as a group, the system would accurately calculate the rankings of each member based on an individual's contributions. Nobody had the courage to question the validity of the system. Like the last one, this Tower of Trials also had 7 floors. Furthermore, after entering the Tower of Trials, they would realize that the space inside was so wide as if there were no limits. Due to the space, they are likely exposed to different situations at any given point. Chapter 2081, Downstream Mountain 5. Lying on Big Sister Wei's back, both of Su Luo's eyes were still tightly shut as she was in a meditative state. Suddenly, there was a beam of light shining around her body. However, no one was able to detect it as it had only shone for a split second. On the first round, as soon as they entered, 20 octagonal horned buffaloes were running toward them in a rampage. The octagonal-shaped horns over their head were sharp and glowing. If it was under normal circumstances, Big Sister Wei would have rushed over with her big wooden club. However, since the injured Su Luo was on her back, she preferred not to be in the fight, but watching her teammates. Each of the other 6 teammates seemed so cruel and savage as they furiously approached and killed the buffaloes. After a short while, the 20 buffaloes were all killed. After finishing the round, the 6 teammates squinted their eyes and looked at each other, mouthing 2 words towards Su Luo and Big Sister Wei. "Stupid wench." It was simple. The first few rounds were the easiest points for everyone to earn. Such as this round, there were a total of 20 foolish octagonal horned buffaloes. For every kill, the system would add some experience points. This was some extremely easy points to earn, but Big Sister Wei was so slow-witted that she was completely unaware of this situation. This was straight up some easy points. However, she didn't even bother to get some, just standing aside to watch. The 6 teammates were secretly exchanging glances, laughing at Big Sister Wei. They tacitly understood each other and agreed to not tell Big Sister Wei about it. Furthermore, they also completely forgot about the unconscious Su Luo. A team of 8 is fine. At least there were less people to divide the points with. Who said we have 8? Clearly we only have 7. Someone pointed at Su Luo, who was still unconscious on Big Sister Wei's back. 7? We clearly only have 6 here. Big Sister Wei is just there watching. Dividing points for 10 people into 6 is definitely not bad. We should survive till the end. If not, we would still be in the bottom ranks. While everyone was discussing, they had already entered the second round. The monsters for the second round were still the foolish octagonal horned buffaloes. Even though their difficulty level was the same, the numbers dramatically increased. In this round, there were 40 of the octagonal horned buffaloes. Based on the calculation of the system, each person had 4. At the moment, Big Sister Wei was constantly watching Su Luo on her back and didn't seem to have any intention of competing for points. Therefore, all 40 of the octagonal horned buffaloes belonged to these 6 people. For a short while, there were only battling sounds along with rising passions. Carrying Su Luo on her back, Big Sister Wei was sitting on the side. She was so bored that she was yawning, holding up her face with her hand, dozing off into her lap. She was even sleep-talking, in front of the Tower of Trials. Not sure since when, there was a crowd of people. Among them was a guardian. Another among them was a man who was a little older than 30, with gloomy eyes and a cold, prideful look on his face. He was looking at the situation in the Tower of Trials with a smirk. There was another old man wearing loose-fitting angelic clothes who seemed healthy and kind. As the old man waved his hand, the wall outside of the Tower of Trials slowly revealed an enormous screen. The screen was divided into 10 different frames, with each focusing on each team battling inside. On the right side of the screen was a ranking board. Every 3 seconds, the screen would refresh to reflect the current rankings. Chapter 2082, Downstream Mountain 6. The old man was clasping his hands behind his back, following the glances from the man, and he looked at the screen. When he saw Big Sister Wei was sleeping and snoring by the wall with the unconscious Su Luo, his temples twitched. Being this old, this was the first time he witnessed a candidate going into the Tower of Trials to sleep and another being unconscious. Such an eye-opening opportunity. What are the names of those 2? The old man was curious. Look at yourself. They're the last 2. The man who was older than 30 years old said coldly. The last 2? He looked at the rankings on the right side of the screen, directly staring at the bottom of it. On the screen, the rankings were from 201 to 300. On the bottom of it were 2 red names. Following the order, it was Big Sister Wei and Su Luo. Their names didn't have a ranking in front of them, because they were the last ones to enter. Furthermore, they didn't move at all even after entering the Tower of Trials. So, the system judged that they didn't have any rankings. Interesting, how interesting? The old man stroked his beard, looking at the 2 people who were sleeping through the screen with deep interest. Old Ning, you're interested in those 2 people? In my opinion, they're stupid. The man smirked. Lung Xiao, are they your enemies? Why are you speaking so harshly? Old Ning glanced over at him slowly. Lung Xiao hummed, but he didn't answer. Were they enemies? Of course they were. If not, why would he be here watching over their actions? Originally seeing them being geniuses in the distal end mountain, he thought that they were good enough for him to not look down at them. Who knew that these 2 were just 2 stupid people, wasting all of his time? Lung Xiao decided, if they were still as stupid in level 3, he would just wave his sleeves and leave. The guardian smiled while looking at old Ning, whispering, I feel like Lung Xiao isn't being harsh, he is just speaking facts. Old Ning threw an angry look at the guardian. This man had always been selfish and narrow-minded. Did these two girls do anything to him? Old Ning smirked. If not, do you want to bet? I already felt that these girls will be in the top 3. Puff! Just as Old Ning finished his words, the Guardian and Lung Xiao were laughing their heads off. Lung Xiao was more extreme. He laughed so hard that he was leaning back and forth, with one hand stroking his belly and the other pointing at the screen. These two idiots, you said they would make it to the top 3? This line is the most horrifying thing in the world. Are you actually thinking that there is no one from Distal End Mountain who can be better than them? Do you actually mean these little girls will be in the top 3? The Guardian thought this was funny, but he was angry and threw a malicious look at Old Ning at the same time. Old Ning felt it was so funny when he looked at the two men, he seriously knocked his head. I feel like these two girls are hiding themselves. So, what now? Do you dare to bet with me? Bet? Why wouldn't I? Winning against the Old Ning, it is such an honor. Lung Xiao continuously jested as he smirked. Old Ning looked over to the Guardian, who sullenly knocked his head, saying, What does Old Ning want to bet with? How about Soul Essence? Old Ning stared at the two. If I lose, I will give you each a Grandmaster level pill. However, if you lose, each of you will give me a Soul Essence. Deal! Both the Guardian and Lung Xiao agreed. Chapter 2083, Downstream Mountain 7. I bet those two idiots won't even make it past the 5th level, Lung Xiao said in a cold voice. The Guardian remembered Big Sister Wei's speed, pondered for a bit, and said, Then, I will bet that they can't make it past the 6th level. Not knowing that there were people betting on their progress, Su Luo and Big Sister Wei were still sleeping like there was no tomorrow. On the battlefield, someone was watching from a corner. His eyes flared with hatred. This was not anyone else but the young man who got slapped by Big Sister Wei. In this moment, he glanced at Sister Wei with a vicious, calculating glare. He had been humiliated in front of the elder. This kind of shame had engraved in his heart, and he would never forget it. He could only think about revenge. He had seen Big Sister Wei's strength, so he would not be so stupid as to fight her alone. However, now, looking at the foolish octagonal horned buffalo next to him, the young man sneered proudly. The young man didn't hold back and injured 4 foolish octagonal horned buffaloes in a row. Then, he drove the 4 foolish octagonal horned buffaloes toward Big Sister Wei like a red cape. Right after he did so, the young man was charging towards Big Sister Wei at lightning speed. He even cut his thigh with the dagger hidden in his sleeve to squeeze out the blood. As soon as the foolish octagonal horned buffaloes saw blood, they would charge toward those 2 people in the corner like crazy. For them, there would be nothing but death. Outside of the tower, Lung Xiao sneered. As expected, it looks like I don't have to waste time witnessing those 2 fight to 5th level. They clearly won't be able to pass. Witnessing this, the Guardian nodded in agreement. Would reality play out as they expected? The elder didn't believe it would, so he was now watching the situation intensely through a screen. Just when the young man was just 3 feet away from Big Sister Wei. Big Sister Wei sensed the incoming danger and suddenly woke up, opening her eyes wide. Big Sister Wei's eyes looked like shiny stars. Where did the sleepiness from her eyes go? Boom! Big Sister Wei subconsciously thrusted her big wooden club forward. When Big Sister Wei was in danger, how could she care about holding back her strength? Normally, if it hadn't been for Su Luo's reminder, she would have totally ignored it. The big wooden club lurched forward, hitting the young man in the stomach. Hey, Big Sister Wei said. Her legs sank downward as she mustered her innate spiritual strength and charged forward. The young man was pitiful, because after Big Sister Wei thrusted her wooden club into him, she smacked him into the ground. Art! While he was in midair, the young man let out a tragic sound. All of his friends ran away, and all he could do was look at them. It was unsure if that was Big Sister Wei's intention or not, but the young man's body smashed heavily onto a foolish octagonal horned buffalo's head. Specifically, it was the head of one of the 4 foolish octagonal horned buffaloes charging towards them. Each one of the buffaloes' heads crashed into the ground, so the body of the young man was pierced by one of their horns. The octagonal horned buffaloes were frightened by the sudden attack and immediately ran away. However, their horns were broken in half. How could they tolerate this humiliation? The octagonal horned buffaloes couldn't control themselves. So, they gathered their spiritual strength, roared angrily, and charged like a ram to the right. The poor young man was immediately hit hard against the wall. Then, he quickly fell to the ground. Due to losing too much blood and the additional fall, the young man was quite dizzy for a while. Then, everything went black before his eyes. His ears rang, and he wasn't able to hear anything. Chapter 2084, Downstream Mountain, 8. The blood inflamed the bloodlust of the foolish octagonal horned buffaloes. 4 foolish octagonal horned buffaloes swarmed the young man. The strong horns, sharp teeth, powerful legs, enormous body. 4 foolish octagonal horned buffaloes attacked toward the poor, weak young man. At this moment, the young man really wanted to cry in pain. Was this karma? Did he do this to himself? Arg! When the young man was about to be torn apart into small pieces, there was a voice at the back of his head. The system asked him coldly, "Do you want to continue the assessment?" If he continued, he would have died immediately. The young man continuously chose a single option. No. After he chose to stop, a beam of light flashed through. His body immediately disappeared. He was transported back to the square where everything started. The clothes on his body were torn, and his body was bloodied. He was on the edge of dying. Old Ning glanced at the young man. A trace of disappointment flashed at the edges of his eyes. The guardian and Lung Xiao stared at the teenage young man, secretly cursing him. The young man didn't know how he ended up on the stage with the 3 idols. He was so humiliated that he fainted on the spot. Afterward, the medics came to move him away. The system had a strict moral code. Because there was an assessment every month, it would be such a shame if a candidate died in the tower trials. They couldn't take the loss, especially if it was a genius. Therefore, the rule was set at the highest level of the tower. When someone was about to die, they would have the chance to leave. Of course, if they want to leave, their experience points would automatically reset, and they would be returned to the bottom of the rankings. In the tower, the foolish octagonal horned buffaloes lost their targets. They were so furious. Therefore, they chose to attack the people closest to them and rushed over to Big Sister Wei. As Big Sister Wei saw these foolish octagonal horned buffaloes rushing over, she carefully untied Su Luo from her back because she was scared that her movement might affect Su Luo's state. After arranging Su Luo, Big Sister Wei started stretching, cracking her joints. At that exact moment, the foolish octagonal horned buffaloes closed in. Roar! Big Sister Wei furiously roared. Her body jumped up quickly, and using the big wooden club in her hand, she smashed downward at the buffaloes. For a short while, smashing sounds reverberated throughout the air. After the smashing sound ceased, the 4 poor foolish octagonal horned buffaloes were nowhere to be seen. There was only a big chunk of meat on the ground. The enormous and powerful foolish octagonal horned buffaloes all got smashed into a big chunk of meat. This move from Big Sister Wei completely horrified the rest of the 5 teammates. The meat was smooth and consistent like it was grinded in a machine. If Su Luo woke up right now, she would definitely force Big Sister Wei to prepare some fillings for the next time when they ate wontons. Not only the 5 teammates were horrified, the expressions of the 3 people outside of the tower changed. Old Ning was so proud. I told you so. If they were so talented in Distal End Mountain, how could they not perform well here? Look at that. Only a few moves and they sent that young man flying out. The Guardian and Lung Xiao's expressions were stiff and foul as the color black. Lung Xiao finally whispered a cold sentence. Don't act so proud yet. Wait till they enter level 5. Time was passing by tick. In the tower, the foolish octagonal horned buffaloes on level 2 were wiped out. Chapter 2085, Downstream Mountain 9. Su Luo's name still didn't have a rank. After witnessing Big Sister Wei's formidable stabs in level 2, the other 5 teammates didn't dare to provoke her anymore. Even if they were cursing behind her back, they only whispered and were afraid to say it loudly. On level 3, Big Sister Wei still didn't want to move, and Su Luo was still unconscious. Seeing everyone engaged in battle, Big Sister Wei put Su Luo in a corner. Then, she rubbed her own fists and palms, eager for some action. Level 3 difficulty level was doubled compared to the level 2. Even though it was still octagonal horned buffaloes, there were 80 of them this time. If it was the other teams, each person would take 8 octagonal horned buffaloes, and it would be just barely manageable for them. However, for Su Luo's team, there were only 5 people fighting, considering both Su Luo and Big Sister Wei weren't participating in the battle. Furthermore, these 5 were rumored to be the weakest people in Distal End Mountain. If not, they wouldn't be assigned to the last team. How could 5 people defeat 80 octagonal horned buffaloes? Before long, these 5 people were all surrounded by the broad and powerful octagonal horned buffaloes. Their screams were endless, and blood started to gush out like a hurricane. At this time, they finally thought of Big Sister Wei. Hence, the whole group screamed with all their might at the top of their lungs for Big Sister Wei. Seeing as Su Luo's brows knit together tightly with more and more cold sweat appearing on her forehead, Big Sister Wei knew that the background noises were interrupting Su Luo. So, she then covered Su Luo's ears, turned around, and screamed, "Shut up!" After Big Sister Wei screamed, the entire place was quiet. The octagonal horned buffalo's eardrums shook so hard to the extent of causing a lot of pain. Soon after, they came to the realization that they were bellowed at by a human. To them, this was extremely shameful and humiliating. Therefore, they all turned around and charged toward Big Sister Wei. How convenient! Big Sister Wei was scared that if she left, the octagonal horned buffaloes might eat Su Luo, so she didn't dare to move even a single step away from Su Luo. However, now that these foolish octagonal horned buffaloes were running toward her out of their own volition, now all she had to do was guard this corner. Hence, the octagonal horned buffaloes attacked her continuously while Big Sister Wei knocked them out with her big wooden club. Outside of the tower, Lung Xiao raised his lips into a cold smirk, a fully grown body with a simple mind. So stupid. The Guardian smiled with unclear intentions. Expressing that he agreed with Lung Xiao's perspective, the Guardian nodded slightly. There will always be limits to a person's physical strength and spiritual power. This woman is too stupid. Before long, she'll probably become exhausted and die. Old Ning coldly smirked. The people who are truly stupid are you too. In my opinion, 80 octagonal horned buffaloes aren't enough for her to play around with. Another 800 is more like it. Ha! The Guardian and Lung Xiao continued to laugh coldly. Inside the tower, Big Sister Wei was swinging her wooden club fiercely. She wasn't thrusting one by one, she was directly swinging it around in a circle. For each of her swings, she took out at least 2 to 3 octagonal horned buffaloes, flipping them into the air. Upon falling onto the ground, the buffaloes screamed relentlessly before slowly dissipating into the air right where they were. Hence, numbers flickered endlessly in Big Sister Wei's head. +2 +3 +3 +4, there were so many numbers popping out nonstop that her head became dazed and dizzy. Afterward, outside on the screen, Big Sister Wei's rank suddenly rose up with a tututus sound. It seemed that one could rise to a new rank without the screen refreshing. 296,294,290. 280,276,273. Soon after, the entire area outside of the tower was so quiet that even the sound of the wind blowing against the falling leaves could be heard. The audience outside of the tower, except for those 3 outsiders, there were many people such as the injured ones who got swept out continuously, the medics, the guards. Chapter 2086, Downstream Mountain 10, Inside the Tower. Big Sister Wei got so annoyed by the appearance of the numbers at the back of her head. What were the numbers increasing for? Increase my ass. Big Sister Wei swung her arm up, as if she wanted to clear away the numbers, but the numbers were still there. Am I about to die? Big Sister Wei smacked the back of her head, quietly turned around, and asked Su Luo. But Su Luo's eyes were still tightly shut, immensely healing her own soul as before, so she didn't have the time to reply. You, what should I do now? Am I really going to die? Big Sister Wei regretted as the more she thought about it, the more she got scared. She has a whole bag of chicken drumstick. How could she just die? All of you did this, damn. Big Sister Wei pointed at the octagonal horned buffaloes with her big wooden club. She remembered it vividly. After these ugly buffaloes came, the numbers started to appear at the back of her head. I will kill you all of you. Big Sister Wei was furious. The wooden club in her hand was increasingly getting more powerful. Afterward, the numbers at the back of her head were changing even faster. +5 +6 +5. Hence, Big Sister Wei ground her teeth while the numbers were jumping nonstop. Eventually, she killed all of the 80 foolish octagonal horned buffaloes. The 5 teammates were stunned, slightly opening their mouths, and casted an admiring glance towards Big Sister Wei. They knew that she was strong, but having this phenomenal strength really made others feel despair. Outside of the tower, everyone was surprised while looking at the screen. Everyone was so focused that they didn't dare to breathe until Big Sister Wei's last swing. Immediately, the last 8 octagonal horned buffaloes fell onto the ground and died. What the heck? Lung Xiao couldn't even curse anymore. Was this mad woman even human? Could humans even be this strong? Old Ning stroked his goatee and laughed. Didn't I tell you so? They were hiding their own strength. Look, aren't they powerful? It's too late for you to regret it. Regret? Is Old Ning joking? Lung Xiao coldly smirked. Old Ning's words are correct, but not fully. Oh. Old Ning put on an expression as if he was trying to listen. That girl is undeniably really strong, but she is stupid. So what if she is stronger? Furthermore, she has a detrimental weakness now. She can't leave the young girl behind her. Lung Xiao smiled faintly. So, I still stand by my opinion. They won't be able to survive any further than level 5. Ambition never dies until there is no way out. If so, then I'll wait tirelessly for it. Old Ning chuckled looking at the unconscious Su Luo. Comparing the two, he was more interested in seeing Su Luo go berserk. However, it was such a shame that everyone was seeing her as a burden right now. This was a perfect example of when a diamond wasn't discovered, and he hoped she could soon shine brightly. At the moment, Big Sister Wei's rank was at 260. Her rankings were even higher than the rankings of the 5 teammates. Since she killed 80 foolish octagonal horned buffaloes single-handedly, all the experience points were hers. Until now, Su Luo's ranking still remained at the bottom, all alone. It left everyone pointing at her and pitying her. When a person was still immensely healing their soul, it was hard to tell when they would wake up. Would she be able to wake up before the assessment ends? Chapter 2087, Unparalleled Elegance. 1. Because of Big Sister Wei's presence, she carried everyone through the 4th level before anyone realized. Standing on the 5th level of the competition space, the 5 teammates were looking at each other in shock. Fast, it was too fast, faster than they could even react. Now, Big Sister Wei's strength was recognized by her teammates. Although no one said it explicitly, everyone had just assumed Big Sister Wei as the leader of this little group. However, Big Sister Wei had yet to realize this. Although the team accepted Big Sister Wei, it didn't mean they feel the same way for Su Luo. As Big Sister Wei carried Su Luo walking in the front, the 5 slowed down a bit and began to whisper among each other. Big Sister Wei's strength is great. We can play weak and get carried by her in the competition. Of course. But dang, I never knew Distal End Mountain was hiding such a powerful person. If she is this good, why is she taking on this competition now? They want to be low-key, maybe? But anyway, Big Sister Wei has gotten our trust, but the girl that she is carrying on her back is a big dead weight. If we don't have her around, without her, Big Sister Wei can focus on carrying us to the top. After the last sentence was spoken, Everyone came to an agreement and gave each other a look of understanding. If one person wasn't selfish, the world and universe could be destroyed. In order to get to the top ranks, we would risk everything, because the higher rank you were, the higher score and better rewards you would get. Everyone had gone crazy for this competition. A student who didn't want a good score wasn't a good student. 5th level. Because of every competition, the testing material was different. So even these downstream mountain people didn't know what they should expect in these 7 levels. All they knew was that after the 5th level, every single party room would be combined. Meaning, everyone in the competition would be in the same space, not separated, unlike before. At the same time, outside the tower, 10 divided screens that were displaying before had joined into one big screen. On the 5th level, everyone slowly came to a halt. There were a lot of people around and scattered around the corners. However, now it suddenly got super quiet. There were a lot of people here, but it was so quiet as if no living being was present, which gave a weird feeling. The 5 teammates looked at each other. They were feeling nothing but chills down their spine and stiffened up their bodies. The unknown brought true fear, as it brought out unlimited imagination and countless possibilities that could happen. Compared to their whimpering state, Big Sister Wei was acting like she was on a vacation. She scouted a spot that was quiet and set Su Luo down in a corner. As she was watching Su Luo closely, she finally relaxed after seeing that Su Luo's face became calm and had regained blood flow. Then she sat next to Su Luo, with her legs crossed, and brought out a big pouch. Was that bag full of weapons? The 5 teammates stared at Big Sister Wei with glittering eyes. With Big Sister Wei's bag full of weapons, they thought they would be much safer. Instinctively, they dashed towards Big Sister Wei, hoping to get a weapon. Big sis, we will protect you. Someone was flattering Big Sister Wei, but soon his smile disappeared. Because he saw with his own eyes, Big Sister Wei pulled out a chicken drumstick. A chicken drumstick? Chapter 2088. Unparalleled Elegance 2. At this time, Big Sister Wei was oblivious to any external sounds. She went head first, chomping down on the chicken leg, every bite turning her face into a ferocious sight. Right at that moment, a white light flashed by. Ah! Ghost! One person screamed out. After that, 2 groups of ghost flames flew by, closely followed by another 4 ghost flames. At this time, there were at least 50 people present. 1 ghost flame became 2, 2 became 4, 4 became 8. After that, they multiplied endlessly, exponentially. There were a lot of ghost flames, and on top of that, these flames weren't normal fires. They carried a destructive, dark aura within them, illuminating everyone's pale faces. The ghost flames attacked each and every one. Kill! Quick kill! These will make points. The higher the points, the higher the rank, the greater the reward. What are you waiting for? Someone yelled out. Immediately, the eyes of the hesitant contestants flashed with light like glistening crystals as they hurriedly took out their weapons and entered the fray, battling against the ghost flames. The 5th level was in a very wide space. It was so big that one could not see the boundary. Even with 50 people distributed within, it still seemed empty and vast. Thus, for a short moment, no one noticed silly Big Sister Wei and Su Luo in the corner. It was at this time that on Su Luo's team, the 5 teammates also ran out to kill the ghost flames. Because they represented points and ranking, whoever didn't kill them could only be an idiot. Moreover, with all the commotion, it was easy to sneak around taking advantage of the situation. It was a very chaotic scene. It was an absolute mess. Ice, being that water and fire were similar elements, was used for destroying the ghost flames. Besides that one, there was one other element, and that was the element of fire. Only a fire element type of higher rank than the ghost flames could suppress them. Was there anything that ranked higher than the ghost flames? Yes, there was Fallen Red Lotus, but Su Luo was unconscious. There was no one else that could use Fallen Red Lotus. Gradually, contestants started to lose momentum. Upon the field, contestants were being burned by the ghost flames left and right. The ghost flame carried a poisonous element. Entering the body would cause agonizing pain. So, there were always people covered in flames holding their head while howling. Seeing that their lives were in peril, one after another, the candidates decided to give up their rankings. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. As each streak of white light flashed past, many candidates also transformed into white lights, appearing above the wide field. At this time, only 20 people remained. The ghost flames kept endlessly growing in numbers. Fire blazed in all directions. Right at that moment, a veil of darkness suddenly descended. No one could even see the fingers on their hands. What happened? What is this? Where are the ghost flames? Did they seem to have vanished? When the darkness dispersed, many people were bewildered. Before there were countless, endless amounts of ghost flames, but now, none could be seen. The enemy had retreated, which made them ecstatic with happiness and left them confused and uneasy. It was because they did not know when the remaining ghost flames would jump out. It was just as everyone was frustrated and uneasy with the situation that someone discovered Big Sister Wei gnawing on the chicken leg and Su Luo, who had her eyes closed and was still cultivating. TSK, what's up with you two? How could she possibly be in the mood to eat the chicken leg here? Is she an idiot? You couldn't be more correct. From the beginning of this battle, this idiot has been eating the chicken leg. We are tired to death battling the ghost flames. Some people from different teams had to give up because they were seriously injured. While these women here are rolling around eating on chicken legs, what the heck are they up to? Hanging around for points, duh. Don't you know? For every level pass, there is a reward. These women were waiting for us to pass the previous test and continue on with us to the 6th floor. Chapter 2089, Unparalleled Elegance 3. Big Sister Wei was dumbfounded. What was wrong with gnawing on chicken legs? Was she not even allowed to eat her drumsticks? Unable to understand it, Big Sister Wei simply continued chewing on her chicken legs as they continued chattering. Bah! Is this woman deaf, or is the skin on her face thicker than the city wall? Does she have no shame? No, we can't let them tag along just for the points. I have no close relations to them, so why should anyone take care of them? That's right, if they want to follow us to the upper 6th floor, they have to put all their efforts into it. Otherwise, we'll have them thrown out, back to the wide field outside. How do we even throw them out? There aren't any doors or windows. Are you stupid? If we attack them until they're near death, the doors will open up. Have you all forgotten this? These people have never seen Big Sister Wei in action, who could take on 80 octagonal horned buffaloes alone. So, they had no idea of her prowess. As the saying goes, in any difficult situation, one had to pull their own weight. As they believed that these two women hadn't been doing anything while they worked tirelessly, the candidates felt a great sense of injustice. Hearing this, Big Sister Wei's few companions widened their eyes in horror and tried to explain. You've misunderstood. Our captain is actually extremely powerful. She just hasn't shown it. What they said was true, but no one believed it. Hasn't shown it? Ah, what a joke. If she hasn't shown off at this point, then is she waiting until she's thrown out to make a move? I don't think she's hesitating to act. Does she even have the guts to do so? I say this to your captain. Does she even have any virtue? There's only 7 of you left, but one is stupid and another silly. Brothers, we can't tolerate this. We can't let these women loaf off of our points. Brothers, let us unite and throw them out together. Throw them out. Throw them out. Throw them out. At this time, the anger was ragingly spread. The 5 companions who surrounded Big Sister Wei looked at each other. Then, they hesitantly, nervously, and slowly stepped aside, and quickly slipped into the crowd and disappeared without a trace. Big Sister Wei, still holding a half-eaten chicken leg, gazed at the silly group of contestants with a blank expression. It seemed that a fight was about to start. Suddenly, a loud noise erupted, shaking the ground beneath them. Earthquake? Everyone turned to where the sound came from. All of a sudden, 2 people loudly whistled. Then, a white light engulfed both of them and disappeared without a single trace, as they feared that it would be too late to escape. Witnessing this, a petrifying horror washed over the contestants. Goodness gracious! What in the world was that? There was a gigantic fireball, slowly rolling forward. The fireball picked up its speed, getting faster and faster, destroying everything in its path, and was heading straight for the crowd. How big was this thing? If Su Luo could see, it would probably be as high as a 3-story building. Retreat! Quickly run away! The terrifying screams did not stop. At this point, they finally understood that the ghost flames they had encountered before didn't actually disappear, but had merged together. From a ghost flame, there was now an entire group of them, getting stronger as their numbers grew. The fireball was now rolling at an incredible speed, and the candidates were scattered like a flock of birds. The fireball didn't slow down at all and kept charging forward. Right in its path was Su Luo and Big Sister Wei. Chapter 2090, Unparalleled Elegance 4. The candidates kept praying in their hearts. However, when the fireball was just 10 feet away from Su Luo, it suddenly came to a forceful stop. It seemed to stretch out its flames and shivered, until it shrank and changed its rolling direction. What in the world was happening? Could it be that it had seen a ghost? It clearly had a target, so why didn't it continue to attack? Many of the people had questions they wanted to ask and huge question marks floating above their heads. This was a situation in which they could not understand, even if they pondered about it in 101 ways. In fact, even Big Sister Wei was at a loss. She was just preparing to bring Su Luo to a safe place. She was even searching all over for some place where she could hide Su Luo with. But who would have expected the giant fireball to turn tail? Seeing no danger to herself, Big Sister Wei went right back to eating her chicken leg, watching the show. The fireball had turned to go to the opposite direction, but had now flared up with a sinister and raging blaze. Then the entire thing flew upwards. The speed in which the fireball flew was terrifying. It wasn't rolling anymore. Now it was spinning non-stop, going in all directions. Because of its massive size, there were inevitably candidates who could not dodge in time and got hit. As a result, the shrill screams kept on going. Those who heard them felt their hair stand on end. If a candidate got hit, they were sure to be crushed. Their body would be set aflame like a human torch. At the end, the burning people turned into flashes of white light before disappearing altogether. Outside in the square, the blackened, burnt bodies suddenly appeared one by one and fell towards the ground, each one landing onto the next, stacking like a human pyramid, their chilling screams unceasing. At this time, Old Ning's brows raised in interest. Just now the fireball abruptly changed its direction right in front of Su Luo. How was this possible? Old Ning couldn't figure it out. The more he thought about it, the greater his curiosity towards Su Luo became. It seems this assessment is stricter than all of the ones before. Old Ning glanced at the Guardian with a smirk. The degree of difficulty for the downstream mountain was personally decided by the Guardian. After all, there were 3 levels: difficult, elite, and hell. Obviously, the master chose the difficult level for the first few, but then chose hell from the 5th level onwards. The Guardian saw the twinkle in Old Ning's eyes and nodded nonchalantly. Last month's assessment was too easy on them. It's time to push them further, so it is only right that I'm setting it more strictly. Old Ning glanced at the Guardian with a complacent smirk in his eyes. As he casually stroked his goatee, a careless smile flashed across Old Ning's eyes. The two men seemed to understand each other so well. Who would believe that they weren't in cahoots? At this time, the entire tower was in extreme panic. There had been more than 20 candidates, but now only a dozen or so were left. The 5 companions in Su Luo's group had also been cut down to 2, with the rest having been crushed. As absolutely unrestrained as before, the fireball kept on shooting indiscriminately. At this moment, someone suddenly screamed at the sky. If we are all killed in this assessment, the Tower of Trials will be closed for the next 3 years, and no one can be evaluated. This is the punishment for all of us dying here. We can't admit defeat. We can't be overwhelmed. We must unite and find a way to overcome this. If we can't beat the enemy through brute force, we can only outweed it. No matter what, we must have at least one person reach the 7th floor. Otherwise, we won't be able to take the test for the next 3 years. If this gets out, won't we downstream mountain folks become a laughingstock? You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.